Once upon a time, there was a very squeaky door that would open and close very slowly. And when it did this, it would make a sound, and then it would go, when it would open again, it would go. And it would do this, and it would very much annoy the people whose house this was, who would be really, really frustrated with the fact that there would just be a door that would constantly go. And this went on for a few years, and then they got a repairman, and the repairman fixed it, and then they didn't have a door anymore. And one night they were, having dinner, and they were eating food, and then from the door came they heard a knock, 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 and it wasn't like it was like a knock, 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 where someone was saying knock, knock, knock. And they opened the door, and they saw no one there, but then they heard again, as the door was open, knock, knock, knock. And they were like, well, who is saying this? And they closed the door again, and they're like, these are some kids who have placed a microphone somewhere. And sure enough, there was just a microphone just like laying like right next to the door frame, like at the bottom left of it. It's just like a little like a, I don't know, like a tiny Bluetooth microphone that was just put at the bottom. And then they uh um, so they're like, well, that solves that scary, spooky thing. And they closed the door again. And then they heard a scream, like when they were like that, and then they're like, "Oh shit, someone's being murdered." And they looked outside, and someone was being murdered, and it was their next door neighbor. And they're like, "Holy shit, our next door neighbor is being murdered!" And so they ran in, and they're like, "Oh, next door neighbor, what's happening? You're being murdered!" And then the next door neighbor was like, "Oh no, I was just practicing to be murdered." And as they turned away, they heard a like a slurping sound, and then they looked around, and the woman had actually like taken off her skin, and now she was just like this mass of darkness who was like a creature. And then like they're like, oh my god. And then the creature was like, ah, hi, I'm your new neighbor. I'm just, I'm just a woman in a skin suit, or some darkness in a skin suit. And so he's like, they're like, do you want to come over for dinner one night? And the couple was like, sure, how about tomorrow night? And the woman, the skin suit monster, was like, sure. And so they came the next night, and they're like, oh great, what are we having? And the woman was like, well, it isn't much, but she brought out a one of those fancy dinner tray things, and she put it down on the table, and she opened it up, and then she's like, voila, and then it was a lamp. And they're like, well, we can't eat a lamp. And they're like, and she's like, well, no, it's not finished yet. And so she plugged it into the wall, and then she's like, voila. And they're like, we can't, it's still a lamp, we can't eat a lamp. And she's like, the light, you can eat the light. And the couple was like, well, that's just patronizing. You and then they were like, we're leaving this house in a huff, and if you make fun of us again, we'll call the police on you. And so began a month-long feud between the two houses, where there was like a bunch of property line disputes, and they were like, oh, your fence is a little bit off the marker, and we need to have you rebuild your fence so that your house isn't bigger than ours. And then she was like, that's ridiculous, you're just coming up with things to be mad at me, and just because I tried to serve you food. And they're like, oh, you serve us any kind of food, you served us a lamp. And then this went on for some months, and the people at City Hall got very annoyed with these two neighbors, because they were like, these fuckos are just they're fighting over each other for no goddamn reason. Uh, and eventually, they sat them down. The city hall people were like, we can't keep filling out your forms and looking over your goddamn paperwork. You two are sitting down and having a conversation about this. And so they came together, and they realized that the miscommunication had been was that the skin suit woman was actually, her diet consisted of all light, and the couple, their diet consisted of all food. And so they were like, wow, differences. That's what makes things better. And then they're like, well, neighbor, even though you are a creepy skin suit woman, we really would like to end this property dispute. And she was like, no, no, you started this nonsense. You're gonna fucking see this out. And she's like, I have a court order here for racism and harassment because
Stop.
you have